So you want to buy a set of Aramith balls, but you're on a budget. Can we get close to the Aramith Tournament level of performance, but for less than half the price? Well, we're going to find out. Welcome to Aramith Premiers. And so our Premier ball set by Aramith is manufactured by Aramith at their factory, which is located in Belgium. And like all of their ball sets, these are manufactured from phenolic resin. And Aramith are the world's leading manufacturer when it comes to phenolic resin balls. In fact, they have very little in the way of competition. And if you're quite new to pool balls and you're not sure what phenolic resin is, basically it's a super hard resin that makes it perfectly suited for pool balls. The vast majority of pool balls that are available on the market that aren't manufactured by Aramith won't be made of phenolic resin, they'll be made of a poly resin. And the poly resins don't tend to be anywhere near as hard as the phenolic resin, and they're definitely not as hard wearing. So phenolic resin balls tend to last a lot longer than poly resins. Additionally, phenolic resin tends to be far less hard wearing on your pool table cloth, especially as your balls start to get a little bit older and start to get a little bit of wear. And that's another key advantage when it comes to phenolic resin balls. They're going to save you a little bit more money in the long term because your cloth should last longer between changes. And additionally, when it comes to professional tournaments, the WPA specifications say that the pool balls must be manufactured from phenolic resin. So if you're serious about pool and you're serious about your pool balls, then really phenolic resin is the only way to go. But are all phenolic resin pool balls the same? Well, the answer to that is no, they're not. Even within Aramith's own pool ball ranges, they use several different types of resin. Now, unsurprisingly, the phenolic resin that these ones are made from, these are made from Aramith's Premier resin. And it's also interesting to note that Aramith's Crown and Continental ball sets are both also made from this identical resin, from Premier resin. And both of those sets do come in cheaper than the set that we have here. And we'll be coming back to that a little bit later on in this video. And talking about price, the Aramith Premiers that we have here, the current price on these is $183. And with Aramith's current ball ranges varying in price between $70 and $430, this particular set sits just under the midway. And if after watching this video you are interested in picking up a set of these balls, we will be adding some Amazon links to the very best available deals for you. So if you like what we do, please be sure to help support us here at Average Joe's Pool, and please be sure to use our Amazon links.
Stay where you are, mister.
So our Aramith Premiers come in this kind of funky green box that we have here. And on the inside we have the usual Aramith promotional leaflet. And as mentioned before, these are manufactured from Aramith's Premier resin. And with the Aramith Premier resin, you don't get the vitrification layer that you do on their higher end ball sets. And you're probably asking, well, what is the vitrification layer? Well, essentially it's an extra layer that's formed during the curing process. And that vitrification layer does have an advantage when it comes to the durability of the balls. It's essentially an extra hard outer layer to the ball that gives it a slightly longer life. But when it comes to the Premier resin, this type of resin does not have that layer. But it should still be pointed out that these balls will still last a long time. You can expect to get a minimum probably of 10 years, if not longer, in a residential environment with this set of balls. And these will definitely outlast any poly resin ball. Now on the flip side of that, also not having that layer does offer another advantage. And that is that the numbers that you'll see on these balls will be absolutely crystal clear. Because on the ball sets that do have the vitrification layer, you tend to have a slight blurriness to the numbers. Now that's not really too noticeable when it comes to Aramith's top tier balls, things like the tournaments, all the numbers are nice and clear and they do have that vitrification layer. However, as you come down the Aramith range, maybe looking at something like the Aramith Premiums, the numbers do get slightly blurry. So let's talk about the font that we have here on our Premiers. So what we have here is a very clean and modern looking sans serif font. And interestingly, this is the identical font that's used on the Aramith Crown standard balls, which again we'll be talking about later. And with regards to colours, as we can see, what we have here is 100% traditional pool ball colours. And on our solid balls, they are a solid colour with a white circle with the number in the centre. And for the stripe balls, we have the traditional white with a coloured stripe, white circle, number also in the middle. So from a design perspective, they're certainly a very traditional looking set of balls, with the possible exception of the more modern font. And with regards to the cue ball that we have in this set, this is a plain cue ball with no markings or logo. So now we know exactly what our Aramith Premier balls are, let's move on to our technical tests. For our first test, we'll be weighing all of the balls on a calibrated scale to check if the balls meet the WPA regulations, and also to check for consistency of weight across the set. And the WPA regulations require all balls to weigh between 5.5 and 6 ounces. And as to be expected from the outstanding levels of quality control that Aramith seem to have in place, every ball in the set easily hit the WPA requirement, with an average ball weight of 5.85 ounces. Our heaviest ball was the number 8, which came in at 5.89 ounces. And our lightest ball was our number 13, which weighed in at 5.817 ounces. This gives the set a weight variance of 1.25%, which is an excellent result. Looking at the rankings for weight variance, the Premiers are holding their own, currently ranking 7th in our top 10 for phenolic resin ball sets. That's a very strong result for weight for the Premiers, especially when we take into account the price point, scoring them a rock solid 5 out of 5 stars for weight. Rolling on to test number 2, we'll now be measuring the balls using a calibrated micrometer, and once again checking the results against the WPA regulations and for consistency across the set. And the WPA regulations require all balls to measure 2 1/4 inches, which is 57.15 millimeters, with a permitted tolerance as shown here on screen. And once again, our Premier set easily made the WPA specs, coming in with an average ball size of 57.13 millimeters, with the largest ball being the number 1 at 57.17 millimeters. And our smallest ball was the number 5, which came in at 57.08 millimeters. This gives us a difference of just 0.09 millimeters between the smallest and largest balls, and so therefore a size variance across the set of 0.16%. And taking a look at our top 10 rankings for size variance, this puts the Premiers in 4th place, just missing out to the Aramith Tournament TV and Crown sets by just a hair. So once again, a fantastic result for the Premiers, especially with their more budget conscious pricing, scoring them a very worthy 4.5 stars out of 5 for size.
Sometimes I fight dirty.
So we now know how well our Premier ball set has done in its technical tests. So next we need to move on to something a little bit more fun and actually start playing with these balls during our performance testing. And if you've ever seen any of our review videos here at Average Joe's Pool before, you'll know that we give all products that we review a minimum of 5 hours use to ensure that we can give it a fair and accurate review. And so, just like an old joke that never gets tiresome, I'm now going to get my balls out and play with them for you. Let's roll. And when it comes to performance on the Premiers, thankfully what we have here is just what you would expect from Aramith. Outstanding performance through and through. The balls have a good, solid and weighty feel to them, and they all seem to roll absolutely perfectly. The numbers that are on these balls are super clear and easy to read. And additionally, what we have here is a very traditional colour scheme, so it's very unlikely you're going to get any balls mixed up. It's worth remembering that these are made from Aramith's Premier resin, which is exactly the same resin that they use in the slightly cheaper Aramith Crown set. And so, as you may well imagine, these do play exactly the same as the Crowns. However, there is one notable difference when it comes to this particular set as an enhancement for performance, and that is the cue ball. And I found that we definitely had a noticeable reduction in the amount of chalk retention that we had on this cue ball compared to the cue ball that comes in the Crown set. Now that in itself is very strange because they should both be made from exactly the same resins. However, for some reason, the cue ball that comes in the Premier set is a much cleaner ball than the one that comes in the cheaper Crown set. So can the performance on our Aramith Premiers match Aramith's Tournament set, which is their top of the range set made from Super Aramith Pro resin? Well, there's no question that the Tournaments definitely do have the edge over the Premiers. And although we do have a very solid feel to our Premier set, the Tournament set really does take it up to the next level. And we should remember that the Aramith Tournaments are more than double the price of the Aramith Premiers, but for the reduced price are we only getting half of the performance? Well, absolutely not. As I mentioned, these aren't that far behind the Tournaments at all. If the Tournaments were to score a 10 out of 10 for performance, then these would probably get an 8.5 or 9. They are that close. So with all that in mind, let's go ahead and score the Aramith Premiers for performance. So whilst perhaps not quite as crisp as Aramith's Tournament and Super Aramith Pro sets, these really are not too far off. So what we have here is a ball set that's good enough for professional competition use, but at less than half the price of Aramith's top tier tournament sets. And that means we have an amazing level of performance at this price point, scoring the Aramith Premiers a lofty 4 stars out of 5 for performance. So let's take a quick look at the quality with regards to the Premiers. And for this set we definitely have quite a traditional look to it. We do have the traditional colour set and also the traditional design. But that said, this set really does pop, and that's thanks in part to how bright and vibrant these colours are. The colours are super deep, including the dark colours, so they do have, to coin a phrase, a premier look to them. And that's definitely helped even further by the high gloss finish that these have. Just as you'd expect from a ball from Aramith, these have a top end shine that really do catch the light and help these balls look alive. And after our 5 hours of testing, of course, the balls that we have here are all still 100% immaculate. There's also a fantastic colour consistency throughout the set, so when you're matching up these colours they are absolutely spot on. And additionally, the white that's on our cue ball here matches the stripe balls, the poles on the stripe balls, again absolutely perfectly. And this is actually a huge improvement over the Crown set, which are made from the same resin. However, on the Crown set we had quite a discrepancy between the colour of the cue ball and the white poles on our stripe balls. Whereas here we have a great colour consistency throughout the set. Now another thing to mention quickly is going to be our cue ball. Now there seems to be a distinct difference between the quality of the cue ball that we have in this set, which is really good, compared to the quality that we find in the competing Crown set. And it would appear from a visual inspection that the cue ball that's included in the Premier set is in fact different to the cue ball that comes in the Crown set. Now they're all made from the same resin, but the reason that we think that it's a slightly different cue ball is for 2 distinct reasons. Firstly, as mentioned before, in our Premier set we have a really good colour match compared to the poles on the stripe balls. Whereas for the Crown set, the cue ball is noticeably yellower than the striped balls. And additionally, and more importantly, when we tested the Crown balls previously, we found that the cue ball actually retained a lot of chalk, whereas we didn't find that to be a problem at all on this Premier cue ball. In fact, after testing, it was quite the opposite. This was a particularly clean cue ball. All of our testing is done using master chalk, so the chalk was the same, but this was a lot cleaner than the cue ball that comes in the Crown set. So from a quality perspective, we have to say that the cue ball that comes in the Premier set is definitely, from what we've seen, better than the cue ball that you're going to get in that Crown set. And another positive when it comes to quality is going to be the font that we have on these balls. It's a nice modern font that's super clean and very easy to read. Now the reason that the numbers that we have here are so pin sharp is because these balls of course don't have a vitrification layer, which could be perhaps a negative. Now as you go up the Aramith ranges, above this set with regards to price, your next step would be the Premiums, followed by the Super Aramith Pros, and at the top tier we have the Tournaments. And all three of those sets do come with the vitrification layer. And as mentioned before, the vitrification layer does help to give that ball some extra longevity. And so without that layer, there is a chance that the Premiers that we have here won't last quite as long as some of the higher tier sets. But that said, we do need to remember that these are phenolic resin, so these will easily outlast any poly resin set. And so not having that vitrification layer is more of a consideration than an actual negative. And so you have a little bit of a trade-off. You do have the pin sharp numbers that are on these balls, but they might not last quite as long as other sets, of course, that you do have to pay more for. Now, unfortunately, Aramith don't say how long these balls are likely to last. They only give a reference to their tournament, their top-end ones, which they say can last up to 40 years. But I think it would be a pretty safe bet to estimate that these would last an absolute minimum of 10 years, and quite possibly longer. So these are definitely going to be on your table for some time to come. So now we've talked quality, let's give these an official score. So there's no question that the Premiers are definitely a high quality ball set. The quality of manufacturing and quality control is clearly evident, and everything about these feels high end. However, they don't quite have the same level of finish you'd find on Aramith's upper tier sets, but we're definitely in the same ballpark. And getting this level of quality at a budget friendly price scores the Premiers a solid 4 stars out of 5 for quality.
I promise you'll feel no pain.
Get a regular job.
When it comes to considering the value for money on the Premiers here, it would be remiss of us not to also consider and compare them to the other ball sets that are made from this identical resin. And as a reminder, these are made from the Aramith Premier resin, and the other sets that are also made from this resin are the Continentals and the Crowns. The cheapest set is the Continentals. However, we're going to take those off the table straight away. They are not comparable to these with regards to quality. They do have a few minor drawbacks. But at $70, they still offer exceptional value for money. And we have already reviewed those, and you'll find a link for those in the video description below if you want to check those out. So that leaves the Aramith Crowns, which are directly comparable quality-wise to the Premiers. So as we know, our Aramith Premiers, $183 a set is the current price, whereas our Aramith Crowns, $119 a set, so considerably cheaper. And remember, they are both made from exactly the same resin, and they have exactly the same numbering. So what is it you're actually getting for that $60 difference, and is it worth the upgrade? So the biggest factor to mention is that when it comes to the cheaper set, the Aramith Crowns, Aramith do permit minor cosmetic flaws to pass. And when we reviewed the Crowns, we did actually notice a slight defect on our number 10 on the 0. And that'll give you some idea of the kind of cosmetic defect that you might well find within the Crown set. But it is only minor cosmetic imperfections that you'll find on the Crown sets. They will not allow anything to pass that is likely to affect the performance of the balls. So a set of Crowns should play just as well as a set of Premiers, but you might have to put up with a couple of small cosmetic issues. And so if you are happy to put up with perhaps a couple of minor cosmetic defects, what other differences do we have? Well, with regards to design, when you look at these balls, the spotted balls are 100% identical between the two sets in both colour and design. In fact, so much so that you will not be able to distinguish any difference between the two. However, when it comes to our stripe balls, we do have a very different design. On our Premier set here, we have the more traditional design where we have the stripe with the white circle and the number in the centre. Whereas when we look at the stripe balls from our Crown set, we still have the stripe, but the number actually appears on the poles of the ball, so within the white sections. And so they do have a very distinctive difference when it comes to the overall look of the set. And so it's up to you to decide which one you would prefer, and perhaps you can see a little bit more value in these if you prefer this design. And perhaps the biggest consideration when we're looking at value for the Premier set is the Premier set definitely comes with a far superior cue ball to the one that comes with the Crowns. And from a technical perspective, looking at weight on this set, we had a weight variance of just 1.25%. Whereas, for example, on the Crown set, it came in higher at 1.98%. Now, with that said, this is all based around the WPA tolerances for minimum and maximum weights. And those tolerances are very tight, and so there's not actually much room anyway, and all of the balls easily hit the WPA specification. So we are talking very minor fluctuations. But of course, it does make a difference when it comes to getting a nicely balanced overall set. Now, to give that some further context, these came in with a variance of 1.25% for weight, whereas the top-end tournament set came in at 0.61%. And so it would be fair to say that the more that you spend on those Aramith sets, the more accurate those weights become with regards to a matched set. And of course, the same applies to size. So when we're comparing the Premiers to something like the Aramith Crowns, yeah, there's a $60 price difference, but that's not a huge difference. Whereas when we compare these to something like the Aramith Tournaments, their top tier ball, they're currently coming in at around $427 a set. So then we have a huge difference between our 183 and 427. And being perfectly honest, when it comes to performance, the difference between a set like this and Aramith's tournament set is not going to be ridiculously massive. So to buy a tournament set would literally cost you 2.5 times the price of this set. But do the tournaments actually play 2.5 times better than these? Well, in reality, the simple answer is no. Yes, you will get a slightly better game from the tournaments, but you probably only really recognise the difference if you're a top-end or professional player. A far, far bigger difference would be going from a set of poly resin balls to our phenolic resin. Pretty much everyone would be able to notice and appreciate the vast difference between a cheaper set of poly resin balls and something like we have here with the phenolic resins. So when it comes to value, what we have here is definitely a very, very solid set. You have a set of phenolic resin balls here that are suitable for tournament use. And remember that this set is likely to last you a minimum of 10 years. When you look at that $183 price tag, divide that over 10 plus years, it actually looks pretty good. So let's score our Aramith Premiers for value. If you want a great phenolic resin ball set that doesn't break the bank, then the Aramith Premiers are definitely for you. With these, you have a ball set that's good enough for use in professional tournaments and should last for many years to come. And at this kind of price, we're definitely getting a lot for our money, and these seem to be a very wise investment. So the Premiers punch through with 4.5 stars out of 5 for value. So now we've completed our testing, we can award the Aramith Premiers with their official Average Joe's rating. And to do this, we simply take the scores from across our 5 test categories and then we calculate our average. And the Premiers cross the line with an official Average Joe's rating of 4.4 stars, earning them our coveted Average Joe's Sizzler Award, which is awarded to the very hottest products, scoring 4 stars or more. Aramith have created a great traditional looking set from their awesome Premier resin. At this price you really can't go too far wrong. Get them whilst they're hot. So there we have it, that is our review of the Aramith Premiers. And as to be expected from Aramith, these really are a top quality product and Aramith never disappoint. And it's worth remembering that Aramith do have other ball sets available at various prices. And we have done reviews on all of Aramith's current catalogue. So if you'd like to see how these compare to other balls, we will add links to the other Aramith reviews into the video description below for you, including the review of the Aramith Crown balls, which are made from identical resin and are directly comparable to these, but do come in at a cheaper price. And whilst we're talking about price, The current price on these is $183, and these are available to buy on Amazon, and we will be adding Amazon links into the video description below. So if you like what we do here at Average Joe's Pool, please be sure to help us and please click those Amazon links. And so thank you very much for watching, it's genuinely appreciated. Please be sure to use those Amazon links and also hit that like button and maybe even that subscribe button. And so until next time, just remember the first rule of leadership: everything is your fault.
Jesus Christ, not again.